Mr. Speaker, it's a new year in America, but judging by the remarks of the gentlelady from Indiana, it's the same old Republican Party. Because here's where we're at on January 7th, 2026. We have a Republican president who promised to put America first. Instead, in just under a year, he has bailed out Argentina, bombed Venezuela, gave Qatar an Air Force base in Idaho, pardoned the former Honduran drug trafficking president, and cozied up to dictators all around the world. We have a Republican majority that promised to bring down prices. Guess what? Prices are going up. Families across this country are hurting. People are losing health coverage because you guys chose deliberately, Mr. Speaker, to let the Affordable Care Act tax credits expire. Rent keeps going up, grocery prices keep going up, paychecks are not keeping pace. Meanwhile, the President of the United States is openly boasting that America is now running a foreign country. His own advisors can't even answer basic questions about what the hell comes next, what the plan is, how this ends, or when the Venezuelan people can expect democracy. And we have a Speaker of the House who is the weakest and most incompetent Speaker of the House in the history of this body. I mean, honest to God, Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether that's a good thing for the country or a bad thing. On one hand, he's so incompetent he can't get anything done. On the other hand, the things he wants to get done are crazy. You know, and don't ask him his opinion on anything. He doesn't have one. He doesn't watch the news. I don't even think he goes outside. I don't know what keeps him so busy that he doesn't have an opinion on anything, but he certainly isn't legislating. And with all that's going on, conflict, economic strain, and real crises facing the American people, let us turn to the calendar and see what important issue that this Republican majority has us debating on the floor this week, Mr. Speaker. Do you want to know what it is? Not housing, not food prices, not rent, not war and peace or foreign policy or America's future. No, 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 no. All of us are here on the floor right now at the behest of this Republican majority to debate showerheads. Showerheads. You can't make this stuff up. And as if that weren't bad enough, they're still trying to pass last year's appropriations bill. Let's let that sink in. Bills that should have been passed months ago. That is the state of governance under this Republican majority. Late, unserious, and completely detached from the lives of the people they claim to represent. One of these appropriation bills funds the Department of Justice and federal law enforcement. And that brings us to something Republicans would rather forget, but what our country must not. Yesterday marked the 5-year anniversary of the January 6th insurrection. 5 years since a violent mob, whipped into a frenzy by the lie that Trump won the election, even though he lost, stormed into this building to overturn a free and fair election. 5 years since law enforcement officers, Capitol Police and others were beaten, crushed, stabbed, pepper sprayed, and hunted down by a MAGA mob determined to overturn the election and stop the peaceful transfer of power. They hunted members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans alike, and I can still remember them chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," because I was here that day, Mr. Speaker. Right where you are sitting now, right in that chair, I was one of the last members to leave the House floor. And I watched officers barricade the chamber doors behind me, here, with furniture, knowing that they were outnumbered, but refusing to surrender. I mean, I smelled tear gas. I felt the chaos. I saw the mob outside of the Speaker's lobby. The officers who were here that day saved lives. They upheld their oath to the Constitution. Many of them were hospitalized. Many were permanently injured. Some died, either from injuries sustained that day or by suicide after the trauma that they endured. Nearly 2,000 people were arrested, tried, and found guilty for their crimes that day. And what did Donald Trump do? He pardoned every single one of them. He pardoned the criminals who beat officers bloody, desecrated this building, and tried to tear American democracy apart. In my book, those pardons were unforgivable. Unforgivable. And you know what he did yesterday? He put up a disgusting, disgraceful statement on the official White House website, lying about what happened that day, blaming the police, and calling everyone who was here that day innocent. Not a single mention of the 140 officers who were assaulted that day with weapons like bear spray, stun guns, hockey sticks, broken pieces of furniture, and flagpoles. Not a single mention. In fact, the White House even put up a statement that, quote, 0 law enforcement officers lost their lives, end quote, which is a disgusting lie. It is a disgusting lie and a disgrace to the memory of Officer Brian Sicknick, who laid in honor in the rotunda of this Capitol building after he died in the aftermath of January 6th. And after all of that, Speaker Johnson still refuses to display a plaque in the Capitol building to honor the officers who stood up to the mob that day, a memorial he is required by law to put up. I mean, you know, here it is, Mr. Speaker. Here it is, right here. That is what the Speaker refuses to put up. This is what it looks like. It's not the real one, because the real one is downstairs in storage somewhere. Speaker Johnson refuses to hang it up, and why? And why? We all know why. We all know why. He won't hang it up because he's Donald Trump's puppet. That's all this is. If he hangs up the plaque, Trump might get mad at him. What a pathetic, shameful abdication of duty. And I'm sure the gentlelady won't address a single point I made here about January 6th. I don't know whether she's afraid of the repercussions, but the bottom line is, I just want to say for the record, shame on Republicans for trying to cover up their complicity in what happened that day. And shame on them for wasting the people's time on showerheads while ignoring the economic, democratic, and moral crises staring this country in the face. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentlewoman from Indiana. All members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities toward the President.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if the gentleman from Massachusetts heard my opening, but this is about housing. We literally have a bill called the Affordable Homes Act that addresses the cost of housing. And he also commented that we are only appropriating and considering our appropriations bills yet today. But we weren't the ones that shut down the government for 41 days, preventing us from doing our appropriations work. And they did this. The Democrats shut down the government to fight for taxpayer-funded health care subsidies that would go to the wealthiest Obamacare enrollees across the nation. Think about that. They shut down the functioning of the government, preventing us from appropriating on the very good things that we talked about in the opening comments, meaning millionaires would be eligible to receive tens of thousands of dollars of taxpayer-funded subsidies for their Obamacare plans. This would give $350 billion in taxpayer bailouts, not to the American people, but to big health insurance companies, all while they're receiving record profits. This incentivizes bad actors to manipulate individuals to sign up for coverage through the ACA marketplace, oftentimes without people even realizing that they had been enrolled. This is government waste, fraud, and abuse at its worst, and I'm proud that House Republicans stood up against that. The gentleman from Massachusetts also referenced the Shower Act that we have here today. And I would just like to say that I'll stand up here every week, every day, to restore freedom of choice and freedom of movement back to the American people. You have to start somewhere, from electric vehicle mandates to prohibitions on gas stoves and heaters, showerhead efficiency standards in affordable homes, in manufactured housing that cause the cost of home ownership to go up, avoiding the American dream opportunities for millions of Americans. But that's business as usual with Democrats in Congress. Closing businesses and demanding quarantine. This is Big Brother knows best, and that's what the Democrats are best at. But House Republicans are going to fight back to restore that personal choice, all while ensuring fiscal responsibility. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Weber.
Gentleman from Texas, recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentlelady. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of HRS 6938, the combined rule for the consideration of H.R. 4593, H.R. 5184, and 6983. Mr. Speaker, it gets fun listening to the fairy tales from the other side from time to time. I have to give them that. This rule advances a combined appropriations package that includes critical investments for Texas's 14th congressional district, which I'm proud to represent. My district is home to some of the largest refineries in the United States, 3 LNG gas export terminals, numerous petrochemical facilities, and vital energy infrastructure that keeps our nation running. The energy produced in Southeast Texas, Mr. Speaker, moves across America and to our allies through pipelines, trains, trucks, and even cargo ships. Several provisions in this bill ensure that that energy continues to flow reliably and securely. Funding for the Coastal Texas Protection and Restoration Project, more locally known as the Coastal Spine Project, is included in this underlying bill. This critical project, focuses on flood damage reduction, environmental enhancement, as well as economic resiliency. It could save $2.3 billion with the B dollars annually by reducing flood damage and improving over 6,000 acres of coastal marsh and land to help mitigate storm surges. Marco Rubio, just a minute. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just as importantly, it protects 30% of the nation's refining capacity, 42% of specialty chemical feedstock, and 80% of our military-grade fuel supply. The bill also provides over $9 million to upgrade the Sabine-Neches waterway, which moves more than 194 million tons of cargo each year and is projected to exceed 210 million tons in the near future. This waterway supports approximately 375,000 jobs and is it's indispensable, indispensable to America's economy and energy security. Mr. Speaker, this appropriations package delivers real results, not just for Southeast Texas, but for the nation. I urge my colleagues to support the rule and this critical legislation. I yield back.
Gentleman reserves balance of her time. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, let me just respond to the gentlelady. A lot of words, ton of words, but as I predicted, not a single word about the brave officers who defended this chamber and defended every member of Congress on January 6th who were attacked by a violent mob. Not a single word. Not a single word. And I just also want to remind the gentlelady, because maybe she forgot, regrettably, Republicans are in charge. You're in charge of the House. You're in charge of the Senate. You're in charge of the White House. You know, I mean, so you can complain about Joe Biden. You can complain about Democrats, but you're running the show. And I was really fascinated to hear the gentlelady talk about the shutdown. And again, the Republicans are in charge of everything. I mean, they have the votes to do whatever they want to do. But when the government shut down, it was a Republican shutdown, by the way, when it shut down, you could have worked on the appropriations bills, by the way, which were already late by definition by the time of the shutdown. They were already late. But you could have worked on getting the appropriations work done. And what did my Republican friends do? They decided to go home and take a vacation. They just left. They walked away. They did not a thing. They went on an extended vacation rather than doing the people's business. And I got to say to the gentlelady, with all due respect, I mean, I do town halls all the time. And I don't know whether the gentlelady does. I know a lot of Republicans do not. But when I do my town halls, what I hear from people is about the high cost of living. I hear about the high cost of groceries. I hear about the high cost of health care. I hear about the high cost of housing. You know what I don't hear people talk about? Showerheads. I mean, you know, and when they talk about freedom and liberty, they don't talk about showerheads. So I don't know what planet my Republican friends are living on, but I got news for you. The #1 issue in America is not showerheads. It's health care, it's affordability, it's housing, it's making sure that they can support their families. People look at life through their kitchen window, and they have to pay bills. They have to make sure that they make ends meet. And right now, under this Republican economy, life is too damn expensive. People can't afford the basic needs. I just gave a 1-minute speech before we get into this debate about the increase in hunger in this country. And you know what the Republican response to that is? What the Trump administration is doing to combat hunger is they are now banning the monthly report which gives us the data on how many people are hungry in this country. No, we're not investing in programs to help combat hunger. We're not fighting for higher wages. We're not trying to lower health care costs. We're just going to hide the information from people so that people don't know how bad the situation is. So again, appreciate the gentlelady's, all of her words, but quite frankly, they ring hollow. What people want us to do is fight to make life more affordable and more reasonable for them. And with that, I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserved. Gentlewoman from Indiana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind my colleague on the other side of the aisle that House Republicans did pass a funding mechanism out of the House of Representatives to the Senate. And because of the 60-vote rule in the Senate, we did need the help of Democrats in the Senate to fund the government. And they held out, and again, for the purpose of funding taxpayer-funded health care subsidies to benefit the wealthiest Obamacare enrollees in the nation and fat cat insurance companies. I'd also like to note that much of what the gentleman has been referring to is the deflection is like a magic trick. You can say words, just like he accused me of saying many words, but the facts outweigh the deflection, which is it took much of 2025 to rid ourselves of Sleepy Joe America Last Biden economic hangover, but Republicans in Congress and President Trump have delivered. America is now reaching new milestones under Republican leadership, turning the tide back to American greatness. Let's just look at the economy. Quarter 3 GDP growth was a roaring 4.3%, the fastest growth in years. The deficit is being addressed. The federal government's cumulative deficit for fiscal year 2026 at the end of November was 19% lower than the same time last year. Core inflation at 2.6%, the lowest we saw in 4 years. Rents are falling month after month, and shelter inflation is at a 4-year low. Gas prices are down to their lowest levels in 4 years. Stocks are at near highs by the end of the year, with the S&P climbing by 17% in 2025. All of this before the gains of the working families tax cut legislation are realized, and we're just getting started. So it will take us a while to recover from the years of inflationary policies of the Biden administration, but the facts show that House Republicans under President Trump's leadership are delivering on promises to reduce costs for American families. With that, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Siscomani.
Gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of this bipartisan conference agreement covering the Commerce, Justice and Science, and Energy and Water, and the Interior and Environment appropriations bills. This package shows that when Congress works together, we can deliver full-year funding that meets the needs of our communities. And this package makes smart, responsible investments in public safety, energy reliability, our public lands, and for those of us in the West, water conservation, and infrastructure. As the only member of the Arizona delegation in both the Senate and the House, serving on the Appropriations Committee, I have worked to make sure this bill delivers real results back home in Arizona's 6th congressional district. That includes specific community project funding requests developed directly with local leaders who know their communities best and targeted at their issues that matter in our communities the most. This bill supports, for example, community safety vehicle fleet modernization for Tucson's first responders so that they have reliable vehicles when every second counts in their line of work. It also includes funding for the Sahuarita Police Department radio replacement so officers can communicate clearly and safely in the field. And as the Colorado River continues to face a worsening drought, water security is more important than ever. This package helps fund water reclamation facility upgrades in Tombstone that will improve efficiency and replace aging infrastructure. It supports the multi-municipality sewer treatment project that modernizes systems and projects public health across multiple communities in Graham County. It also invests in source water system improvements at Marana Regional Airport and the Pioneer Well PFAS treatment project to help ensure safe and reliable water for families and businesses. These are practical, locally requested projects that are transparent, accountable, and focused on results. Mr. Speaker, this conference agreement reflects a responsible use of taxpayer dollars while strengthening public safety, water security, and critical infrastructure. I am proud of the work we have accomplished, and I strongly urge my colleagues to support this package. And, sir, I yield back.
Gentlewoman reserves the balance of her time. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, the gentlelady said nothing about January 6th or nothing about the brave men and women who protected this chamber and all of us on that terrible, terrible day. But I have to say that I was more than amused by listening to the gentlelady spout about how great everything is right now. The Trump economy is perfect. Everybody's doing great. Everything is wonderful. Everything is terrific. I wonder, I don't know whether the gentlelady holds town halls or not, but I wonder whether the voters of Indiana actually share that point of view. I got to tell you, I don't think so, because I don't think the voters in general in this country, the people, the citizens of this country share that view. Because every poll that I have seen, every town hall that I have been at, by the way, not only in my district but in other states, people have complained about how expensive things are. They say Trump's economy is making life more expensive, more difficult. The price of health insurance is going through the roof because this chamber won't extend the ACA tax credits. Groceries are going up. I don't know whether the gentlelady goes to the supermarket or not, but the price of groceries are going up. And, you know, I want to, Mr. Speaker, ask unanimous consent to insert into the record an article from Politico entitled, "Poll, Trump's Own Voters Begin Blaming Him for the Affordability Crisis."
Without objection.
And I don't want to be lectured about, you know, wealthy people in this country, because the Republicans, you know, have done everything they can to help those who are well off get more, and those who are struggling get less. We saw the big, beautiful bill. Tax cuts that included tax cuts for multimillionaires and multi-billionaires. I mean, you know, giveaways to billionaires, giveaways to big ag, to big tech, big oil. And we see cuts to programs that help average people in this country just to get by. By the way, in their big ugly bill, $1 trillion cut to Medicaid. They're cutting monies for SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. That's basically to help people put food on the table. And by the way, increasingly, a majority of the people who are on SNAP are working families, and they're cutting that at the same time that groceries are going up. But if you're a billionaire, you know, don't worry about it. Don't worry. We're fighting a war over oil right now, because we want to make sure big oil that invested so heavily in the last campaign gets their payback. But the bottom line is, when it comes to people who are well off, well connected, and have lots of money, you know, they're doing fine. Everybody else is getting screwed. And if you ask the average person on the street about what they think of Donald Trump's economy, I'll tell you what they'll say. They'll say it sucks. And with that, I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentlewoman from Indiana.
Mr. Speaker, let's just review some of the wins in the Working Families Tax Cuts Act, because taxpayers are expected to take home an additional $91 billion in refunds and keep an additional $30 billion in their paychecks from reduced withholdings. Taxpayers are set to continue to receive continued support in tax years to come through, a doubled standard deduction and lower tax rates from making the 2017 tax cuts permanent, An increase in the standard deduction by up to $1,500 per family in 2025, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, a boost to the child tax credit of $2,200 while indexing its value to inflation, expanding access to child care and paid leave tax credit permanently, expanding the 529 savings accounts to help families choose education that best fits their needs, and expanded health savings accounts so American families can control their own health care. That doesn't sound like benefits to millionaires and billionaires. It sounds like benefits to hardworking American families. Also, I'd like to note that the subsidies that the gentleman from Massachusetts so wants to support would not see, the American people would not see a dime of that. It would go directly to insurance companies who, again, are seeing record profits. The one thing we can do is continue to support health savings accounts and continue the Trump-era tax cuts from 2017, making them permanent, and continuing to promote these tax provisions in the Working Families Tax Cuts Act that received no Democrat support, by the way, that really will help American families. And I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Taylor.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the gentlewoman from Indiana for yielding me the time. Ohio families are working harder than ever, day in and day out, just to make ends meet. They're frustrated that they have to stretch their dollar as far as can go just to keep a roof over their heads, afford to buy the basics, and deal with higher utility bills to keep their water and power on. Buckeye families have worked too hard to struggle this much, and I'm standing here today ready to do something about it. House Republicans have listened to hurting families, and we're bringing forward legislation to help them get ahead. The Affordable Homes Act will cut through unnecessary and complicated red tape that has been driving up the cost of manufactured housing for far too long. Who has ultimately shouldered the burden of these soaring costs? It's not the manufacturers. It's the hardworking families who are simply trying to buy a home and live in the once attainable American dream. Owning a home shouldn't be this much of a challenge. This bill will help Ohio families check home ownership off the list, knowing they were able to achieve exactly what they worked for. House Republicans are also reining in the Biden administration's overregulation of everyday household water fixtures and bringing down costs for all Americans with the Shower Act, and I applaud Representative Fry for leading on this legislation. Americans don't need the government to tell them which shower head to use. They need the government to get out of the way so they can afford the necessities and have money to spend on other things in their lives. This bill will claw back ridiculous Biden-era red tape and put American families first. Lastly, I'm working alongside my fellow Republicans to pass full-year funding for several critical programs. In my district, several water and police projects will be funded, which will benefit some of the poorest and most rural areas in this country. These projects will help to fund long overdue water infrastructure projects and make local improvements, ultimately driving down costs for communities throughout the nation. I would like to recognize Representatives Houchin and Russell Fry, as well as our Republican leadership and the Appropriations Committee led by Chairman Cole for leadership on these critical pieces of legislation being considered. And I urge Congress to pass these common sense bills to lower the cost of living, not only for Buckeye families, but for families across America. Thank you, Speaker. I yield back.
Gentleman reserves the balance of her time. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to tell everybody a little secret here. The Republicans are really clever, but not really as clever as they think they are. The big, beautiful bill that they passed, you know, the one that includes tax cuts for multimillionaires and multi-billionaires, and the one that guts Medicaid by $1 trillion, is incredibly unpopular. It is incredibly unpopular. In fact, the Kaiser Family Foundation said that 64% of Americans oppose it. 64%. And get this, even Fox News say that 59% of the American people oppose it. And why do they oppose it? And why is it so unpopular? It's because what's contained in it. And rather than fix that, and we just heard the gentlelady do this, but rather than fix it, they renamed the bill. The Working Families Tax Cut Act. That never passed the House. That's a new title they made up. And they think all they need to do is change the title of a bill, and then the American people won't realize all the garbage that's tucked into the bill. Yeah, it's like lipstick on a pig. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is insane. The American people are hurting because of the Republican policies. The American people are hurting because they won't extend the ACA tax credits. By the way, people will see their health insurance costs go down if the ACA tax credits are extended. And the gentlelady is like, you know, all upset about it, but I would urge her to talk to some of her Republican colleagues, by the way, who have signed on to a discharge petition to force a vote on extending the ACA tax credits, which we will begin that debate today and vote on it tomorrow. Yeah, so it's not just Democrats. There are some Republicans who are like, I'm hearing from my constituents that they're getting screwed over on their health care, and they want us to do something. Yeah. So, I mean, the bottom line is, you know, you can change the titles of bills and all that kind of stuff, but if you don't change the substance, if you don't get Donald Trump to back off on his tariffs, by the way, which are responsible for rising housing costs in this country, if you don't get him to change his views on that, things are going to continue to get worse. So you can change the titles of bills all you want, but you're not changing the reality for millions of Americans. So this is just, I mean, it's hard to believe that in the House of Representatives, which is supposed to be a serious body, that this is what we are talking about. We are changing titles of bills so that maybe the American people won't know what we're talking about. And with that, I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentlewoman from Indiana. Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I'm going to offer an amendment to the rule to bring up H-Con Res 33, which calls for the plaque honoring the brave police officers that defended this Capitol and our democracy on January 6th to be put up in the Capitol as required by law. As required by law. Mr. Speaker, I am sick and tired of Republicans standing up and proclaiming their unwavering support for law enforcement when they won't even honor the law enforcement that saved them, that saved us and our democracy here on January 6th. Yesterday was the 5th anniversary of the January 6th attack on the Capitol by supporters of Donald Trump. Over 140 officers were injured. An officer was killed. Others died by suicide following the trauma of that day. And do you know how the White House marked this anniversary? Do you know how the White House marked this anniversary? They marked it by putting up an Orwellian webpage, rewriting history, and claiming it is the officers who were to blame for the violence. How disgusting. How despicable. How disgraceful. You know, and I asked my Republican colleagues, do you really believe that crap? When you look in the eyes of the Capitol Police that guard this building, do you accuse them of being responsible for the violence of that day? How dare the President of the United States say such a thing? And how shameful of this Republican majority to stay silent in the face of this depravity and rewriting of history. Republicans found the time to illegally slap Donald Trump's name onto the Kennedy Center, defacing a memorial to a great president in a single day, 24 hours, 24 hours. But illegally required honor for the officers who defended this democracy? I mean, 5 years of excuses, 5 years of delay, 5 years of cowardice and disrespect to law enforcement by Republicans. When all is said and done, history will not look kindly on these Trump Republicans and this Republican majority, and they all know it. They all know it. And at this point, let me say to my Republican friends, it is always the right time to do the decent thing, the thing the law requires, which is to hang the plaque honoring these brave men and women who put their lives on the line to defend us, to defend this building, and to defend this democracy. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of my amendment into the record, along with any extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question.
Without objection.
And I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from Indiana.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Utah, Ms. Malloy.
Gentlewoman from Utah is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this rule that moves appropriations bills bills that reflect the leadership of Chairman Cole and the priorities of this Congress, avoiding another shutdown and spending taxpayer dollars responsibly and in a way that directly benefits Americans. These bills lower the cost of living and boost the economy. They support domestic energy production, result in lower costs for American families and businesses, and invest in water infrastructure to address drought and protect supplies for communities across this country. These appropriations bills that are included in the rule spend hard-earned tax dollars responsibly, reduce spending below current levels, putting money back in Americans' pockets and reducing our deficit. They ensure that government funding works efficiently to deliver services that make life better for Americans, and the American people are watching us. They want to see Congress do our most basic, essential function, which is spending government dollars and controlling the power of the purse. Through bipartisan, bicameral negotiations led by appropriators, we're turning priorities into action and putting American first. And Mr. Speaker, this package demonstrates the value of Congress by delivering results for Utah, for America, and across the country. And I urge my colleagues to support the bill, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman reserves the balance of her time. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
How many more speakers does the gentlelady have?
We have 2 speakers, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, let me just yield myself a brief amount of time here. Again, no discussion, no comments on what happened on January 6th or about what the White House put on its webpage yesterday, blaming police officers for the violence on January 6th, saying that no police officer died when we know that's a lie. And no explanation as to why we're having such a difficult time hanging a plaque that, quite frankly, the law requires us to hang. The gentlelady voted against an amendment to, again, force the Speaker to once again hang the plaque. I'm happy to yield to the gentlelady if she wants to explain why she voted that way, or does she have any reaction to the White House's horrific and disgraceful statement yesterday, basically, smearing the brave men and women who are in law enforcement and the Capitol Police officers? I'm happy to yield to the gentlelady. And nothing. I mean, really? I mean, that's where things have. That's what things have come to. That we can't even come together and stand in defense of the Capitol Police who defended us that day. That we can't honor them. That somehow that's a no-no because Donald Trump doesn't like it. I mean, that really is shameful, and I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from Indiana.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Missouri. Oh, sorry, from the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Herodopoulos.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. The Affordable Homes Act is common sense legislation that cuts red tape and lowers housing costs for hardworking American families. We all recognize between 2021 and 2024 that interest rates went from 3% to 7%. And in my home community, that meant that we spent $1,200 more a month for an average home in my community, $1,200. So we need to think of common sense ways to turn this around and make housing more affordable. President Reagan said once, if it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. If it stops moving, subsidize it. Today, Washington is regulating the same thing twice. Manufactured homes are being hit with overlapping energy mandates from HUD and the Department of Energy. The Affordable Homes Act fixes this by repealing DOE's separate energy rules, restoring clear authority to HUD, which already oversees construction and safety standards. Lower costs mean more homes built, greater supply, and more families able to build equity and secure their future. This is conservative policies at its best, less government, more opportunity, and more relief for American families. And let's also remember that home prices went up also because 10 million people came to this country in a 4-year time period. And simple supply and demand laws tell me that causes prices to rise radically, much like radical policies from 21 through 24. I'm proud to support the Affordable Homes Act to cut the red tape, help more Americans achieve the dream of home ownership. And with that, I thank the chairwoman for leading this charge very much, and I yield back my time.
Gentlewoman reserves the balance of her time. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentlewoman from Indiana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Alford.
Gentleman from Missouri is recognized for 2 minutes.
Well, thank you so much for this time. Mr. Speaker, you know, for too many American families, the American dream seems further out of reach each and every year, especially when it comes to owning a home. Did you know that housing is the #1 monthly expense for most families? And when Washington piles on blue tape, mandates, and bureaucratic nonsense, working families pay the price. Under the Biden administration, their so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which is really nothing of the sort, home builders were buried under costly Green New Scam mandates and overregulation, driving up construction costs and pushing home ownership even further out of reach. Also known as the Green New Scam in action, but House Republicans, we are changing that. We're cutting the blue tape. We are lowering costs, and we're making home ownership more affordable in 2026 and beyond. One great example is the Affordable Homes Act, led by my colleague, Congresswoman Erin Houchin. This common-sense bill removes unnecessary federal interference and eliminates costly energy mandates that drive up the price of manufactured housing. One of the most affordable pathways to home ownership for the first-time buyers, young families, and seniors. This is just one example, Mr. Speaker, of how House Republicans are working to lower housing prices. As co-chair of the Real Estate Caucus, I work with the Trump administration to reverse these disastrous policies because the government should get out of the way and not stand in the way of the American dream. Back home in Missouri, I've seen exactly what these mandates do. A Kansas City builder showed that so-called green energy codes save homeowners only about $125 a year, but add more than $1,200 a year to families' mortgages. It's simple, folks. If a policy costs families more than it saves them, it is not a smart policy. House Republicans are fighting to make housing affordable again, putting families first, and the first step is this bill. I urge passage of the rule. I urge passage of this act. Let's make homes affordable in America again and save the American dream. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman reserves the balance of her time. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
May I ask the gentlelady how many more speakers she has?
I'm prepared to close.
All right. Mr. Speaker, how much time do I have left?
Gentleman from Massachusetts has 9 minutes remaining. Gentlewoman from Indiana has 4 minutes remaining.
Thank you. I yield myself the remaining time.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, let's be honest about what we've seen from this Republican majority. Republicans can't govern. They can't lead. They won't and they don't fight for the people who sent them here. They rush to the floor to redefine what a showerhead is. That's the big issue. They move at lightning speed on tax breaks for billionaires. They bend over backward to enrich Trump and his inner circle, going so far as to invade another country to grease the skids for big oil. It's not about democracy. It's not about human rights. It's not even about drugs. It's about big oil. Big tech, big oil, big pharma, big banks, their priorities move at lightning speed. Tax cuts for the wealthy pass overnight. Corporate giveaways face no obstacles. But when it comes to protecting health care for millions of Americans, suddenly there's hesitation. Suddenly there's delays. Suddenly there's no money. Suddenly they move in slow motion. Suddenly we can't do anything. Well, it may be 2026, but it's the status quo for this Republican majority. New year, same BS for them. Except when it comes to what's happening in Venezuela. Then they're dragging us back to 2003. But other than that, it's always the same funding from elite donors with phony talk about helping regular people, the same contempt for their own voters, the same recklessness abroad, the same incompetence at home. And here is what Republicans always underestimate. The American people are paying attention. They're not stupid. They know when billionaires get everything and everyone else gets excuses. They know when governance is replaced by stunts, distractions, and culture war nonsense. You know, there's always a reckoning for that kind of failure, always. And this year will be no exception. You know, they know all the gimmicks. So, I mean, we passed this monstrosity of a bill called the One Big Beautiful Bill. Again, the American people are horrified by what's in it. Again, you know, excessive giveaways to those wealthiest in this country, cutbacks in health care, cutbacks in everything that matters to working families. I mean, every poll that is done says that it's incredibly unpopular. So what do? Rather than fix the problem, they come up with a counterfeit name for the bill. It's no longer the One Big Beautiful Bill. You know, now it's the Working Families Tax Cut Act. I don't know what the hell that is. I don't know who came up with that idea. Maybe some pollster gave it to you. As if just changing the name of what you call this big ugly bill will make a difference. And so, Mr. Speaker, you know, all I can say is that, you know, with all that is going on in this country right now, I mean, with all of the concerns that the American people have, with people desperately pleading with this Republican president and this Republican majority in the House and Senate to do something to make their life better, we have an opportunity to maybe legislate and help people, and instead, we're talking about showerheads. Showerheads. I mean, really? You know, again, I urge my colleagues to vote no on this bill. I'm going to also, again, remind people about the vote on the previous question. You know, we have a chance to actually do something positive today, and that is to honor the men and women who protected us on January 6th. Unfortunately, Republicans on the Rules Committee all voted no to require the Speaker again to hang the plaque. They all voted no, not a word, no explanation as to why. And not a word about what happened on January 6th has been spoken on this floor by the Republicans today. I don't know how that can be. I don't know how that can be. I was there that day. I was in the Speaker's chair. I saw what happened. I saw what happened when I walked out to the Speaker's lobby. I saw the people who protect us being beaten by this angry mob, and not a word, and we can't get this Speaker of the House to hang up this plaque. That can change if we, with the previous question vote. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the remainder of my time.